excited to talk and getting goosebumps because it's... No, I am, like you can see.
Not the air conditioning.
I'm getting goosebumps because as a doctor, this is quite an emotional experience to be a part of this. The book is just amazing. For everybody, there's something in it for you. Whether you're reading it as a relative or a friend, if you're reading it as a patient or a person who's got an unusual condition or is having some sort of confrontation with the health system or some sort of complication. From my perspective, if you read it as a clinician, as a doctor, to me the book is confronting. That's the way I describe it. That's the one word that I'd use. It's confronting. If this was a report card on our healthcare system, it's a fail. Big time. I think in Australia we've got an amazing healthcare system, both public and private. I've worked in many areas around the world. I've seen many healthcare systems, and ours is world class. I mean, we're excellent. But even though we deliver care really well in the vast majority, people slip through the cracks. They slip through the cracks for all different sorts of reasons. They slip through the cracks because they're a diagnostic dilemma. We can't work out what it is. They slip through the cracks because they've got something that we don't have the technology to treat, we don't have the capability or capacity to. They slip through the cracks because of our own deficiencies. The way in which we cognitively deal with problems and with people, and the way in which we interact with others and hold ourselves in terms of humility sometimes gets in the way of good management. Dinaaz has articulated all of those in this book, through her journey in the healthcare system, all the way through from her teenage years, which actually I was actually completely unaware of when I first got involved. There's actually a huge backstory behind her interaction with me that I had literally no awareness of. But through looking at that journey and the journey that she took once I had started to get involved, it was really apparent that we as a healthcare profession had failed her. And that's confronting. But she writes in such a beautiful way. She writes with dignity. She doesn't write with spite or malice. She doesn't write with a bone to pick or a agenda. She just writes as a person who's going through the difficulties, who's trying to seek help and looking for all of the ways in which she can navigate through a complex problem. And it's inspiring to read and to see someone who's had so much, almost you would describe injustice dealt upon them, yet can stand tall and to ignore that to some degree, acknowledge it, and to move on to what is really important, which is the end outcome. And the end outcome is one of those fairy tales which actually is worked out pretty damn well, which is good. It's the sort of book that I read and it reminds me to stay humble in my profession, that I don't know everything and that I try as best as I can. I'm technically gifted at what I do, but there are things that I'm not very good at or I don't understand. There's the unknown. There's people with conditions that actually I can't diagnose and I actually don't know where to go. People don't fit into boxes all the time, and we're good at that. We're good at pattern recognition. As soon as somebody goes outside of the pattern, then we're lost. We're sort of at our knees. As clinicians, we sort of deal with that in different ways. If we have a person that comes to us with really odd symptoms, with a weird story, it doesn't fit inside the box very well. You know, we could label them as crazy. Actually, some people are, but then there are some people who are very genuine in their quest to be able to get better, and it's up to us to listen, and it's up to us to be able to help them, even if it's not in our area of expertise. It's up to us to be able to listen. And I think that once you've read Dinaaz's book, you'll sort of see that that's been missed by lots of people on the journey. We've dealt with the odd symptoms, the diagnostic uncertainty, the lack of appreciation of our own humility has been reflected in this quite a lot. For Dinaaz to be so forgiving of that, of us, is amazing. It's really amazing. She's a really good example about how a patient would ideally interact with their doctors. So my interaction with Dinaaz is sort of really, it's one of those fortuitous sort of odd coincidences. So I actually have very, very little expertise in her problem. at all. I'm a hip surgeon, and pretty much all I do is hips. That's all I do. And I had a patient one day who we did a hip replacement on, and she woke up and she couldn't move her thumb. That's all she couldn't do. She just couldn't bend her thumb. I could straighten it, but couldn't bend. It sort of racked my brains about that. There was no sensory disturbance. I couldn't detect that there was a tendon rupture. She didn't have any of the other signs that would be associated with a typical neurologic injury. It just didn't fit a pattern. It was weird. It just didn't fit. I had no explanation for it. And I tried to look for an explanation. We sent off for all the tests, neurologists, and nerve conduction studies, and MRIs. I got to the point where I sort of made a hunch. I said, the person has probably got an anatomic irregularity in their forearm of a band of scar tissue that when they hold their hand in a certain way, it compressed the nerve, and they were in that position for the period of an hour and a half during the hip replacement, caused one branch of it to become compressed that would defunction the thumb. It was such a weird case that with the anaesthetist permission, I said, let's write this up. We've never seen this, we've never heard of it, we've got no explanation. So let's write it up because, you never know, somebody will find this information one day and they'll find it useful. Now that's what we in the medical profession would call ultra low value research. One patient, a single patient, no others, with us writing a theory about what we thought might have happened but we can't conclude, and that's our story. Most journals would actually say, well, that's completely non-publishable. It's of no scientific value or merit. Nonetheless, we found somewhere that would publish it. But, to me, the thing is that journals and publications are about communication. They're a method of us as doctors being able to communicate one to another. So if I see something that's really rare, something that's really odd, a little bit strange, isn't a journal the right place to communicate that? How do I broadcast it to the world? How do I broadcast it for others in my profession to say, here's something that's really strange, here's something that we've never seen before. How about the next person that finds this, references this, and we might get a series. We might work it out. Now, so far, I actually don't know whether that's ever happened, except for one person. She's here. So that's how I got involved. Trawling through the internet, trying to find a doctor that would actually listen to her. She comes across a paper that's written by a hip surgeon about a complication that he can't explain. And the answer back is strange things happen, and ultimately culminating to the end result that the decompression was in fact successful and the thumb works. To me, that's a really good illustration where what might be considered as ultra low value research and ultra low non-publishable data on a sort of a hierarchical medical scale, in fact, maybe we've got it wrong. And we do have to flesh out our inadequacies. For the anaesthetist, for instance, whose job it is to position the arm during my hip replacement surgery, that's actually pretty confronting. He's fleshing out that actually there's been a complication under his care that we actually don't understand. Yet he was happy to be able to say, listen, we've made a mistake here, and let's broadcast that to the world. We don't have all the answers, but maybe in fact we've got to eat a little bit of humble pie every once in a while. And that's what, to me as a clinician, that's what this book's about. It's the sort of book that I think keeps us honest. But I think also it's the sort of book that I would like to be able to deliver to future generations of doctors. That's the key. That's the value. The value of this book is that we can't teach the human side of medicine well in a university. We can't teach humility. We can't teach these things, but you can learn it through the eyes of the journey of someone like Dinaaz. I hope you all enjoy reading it because I think it's a really excellent piece of work.
I'm just so thankful to all of you for coming. When I was born on the 5th of May, remember that day, because there'll be a quiz at the end, my grandmother decided to put an extra A in my name and made me a Dinaaz with double A. And there aren't too many Dinaazes with double A's floating around. And as I was growing up, I always thought, when's the luck going to come? I was never the smartest, never the fastest, never anything. Just an ordinary person in an extraordinary family. But when I started writing this book, I suddenly realised I've been lucky my whole life. Even looking at all of you, I know how lucky I am. My story starts in 1977. Some of you know the story, some of you don't, so I'll just briefly gloss over it. I injured my knee playing hockey, and a year later I went back to the surgeon, and he was so concerned about the condition of the knee. He said, "You're going into hospital the next day." I woke up from the anaesthetic, but I was operated on the wrong leg. So hearing the gaps, some of you didn't know this, but I was lucky because he sued me. And because he sued me because I refused to pay his bill, I had to find a solicitor. I went from one solicitor to another, and then I was lucky to meet him. He guided me through the legal maze for 3 months, and then we finally made it to the Supreme Court of New South Wales. The day of the court case, I was told that the doctor had finally admitted his fault and was prepared to settle out of court. And I don't know if you remember when I asked you, I said, "If I settle out of court, is it on record that we operated on the wrong leg?" And you said no. So I said, "Well, I want my day in court." I went to court, and when you read this book, you realise I was thrown out of court as well. I was thrown out by the judge because I was arguing with him. And Mary Claire, who's in the back in the distance, she was my witness, and she was sitting outside. I came out and I said, I stepped up. And she goes, "What happened?" I said, "I just got thrown out." And then she goes, "Why?" Because I was arguing with the judge. And she was mortified. She was like, "You argued with the judge?" That was that period. The next part of the book is when my beautiful daughter Anita was born. A lot of you don't really know what happened at that time 26 years ago, because I've never really been brave enough to openly talk about it. I've written as much as I could, but that part was the most emotionally hard part for me to write about. Basically, I had so much damage during that birth that I ended up having 11 operations over the 12 months. One of the things that happened was I had a fistula. Now, I have not told my parents or my family in all these years about the fistula. It's a very difficult thing to talk about. I basically self-diagnosed my fistula because there was a lady being interviewed on the Midday Show by Darren Hinch. Her name was Dr. Catherine Hamlin. I don't know if any of you have heard of Dr. Catherine Hamlin, but Dr. Catherine and her husband Reginald, they were obstetricians working in Sydney, and they decided to go to Ethiopia in 1959 for 3 months. And Reg died in 1993, but Catherine is 96 and living in Ethiopia. was right. I was lucky. Anita was alive and I was alive. And I had an incredible team of surgeons and nurses helping me over this period of time. Some of them are still looking after me to this day. One of the other things that I experienced during this period was following one of the operations that I had to have. I lost the use of my right hand, thumb, and index finger. I was extremely lucky that I had a hand surgeon called Ian Isaacs. Outside the operating theatre at the 6-month mark, Ian actually said to me, I don't know what's wrong with you, I don't know what I'm looking for, but my gut instinct says that your problem's at the elbow. So outside the operating theatre in the anaesthetic bay, I basically said, okay, if that's your gut instinct, go for it. Within 2 days, my thumb started to move. He was an incredible man. But I don't do things normal like normal patients. Even that incident, even though the success of that surgery was so great, there was a drain left inside, which meant I had to go back in again to get another operation that was totally unnecessary. It was a difficult time, and Anita was basically brought up by my parents. That takes me to the third part of my book. I had an emergency procedure for kidney stones. This time, my left arm was affected. I had pain. I recognised the pain straight away because it had happened before. I went to my surgeon and I said, I know what this pain is. But before I even went to him, that night that I experienced the pain, I brought my phone back to my bed and I started looking up Dr. Isaac's contact details because he's fixed it. But what I found instead of his contact details was his obituary. He passed away. Now I was on my own. I had to find a doctor who would believe me. I went from one doctor to another to another. Even though I saw my first doctor within 24 hours, by the time 5 months were up, they were saying, it's too late. Accept it, the destruction is irreversible, learn to live with it. By the time I saw 20 doctors, I had 20 different diagnoses. I went to Melbourne, I went to Brisbane, I was communicating with doctors in America, in India, in South Korea, trying to find what was actually wrong with me. Along the way, I met many nice doctors and lots of not very nice doctors, but it was all part of the journey. 7-month mark, I went to Julie's place. Raise your hand, Julie. We both had the same hand surgery. And I said to her, he's given up. I don't know what to do now. Julie said, I'm going to pray for divine intervention. Divine intervention came a week later in the form of an astronaut. A totally random astronaut who sent me an email. When you read the book, you'll understand why he sent me the email. He taught me a very important lesson in life. Whatever you want in life, you've got to keep on going. You can't give up. And that was the start. Then I started doing a lot of research on the muscles, the nerves, the veins, the arteries. I learned about drugs. I did as much homework as I possibly could. I even chose my own surgeon. I didn't choose him by his academic qualifications. I chose him based on, he was young, he had a nice smile, his date of birth was numerologically the same as mine, and we both support the Bulldogs. And that's how you choose a doctor. Luckily for me, he was the right one. I also started thinking, I can't possibly be the only person in this whole world who this has happened to. I was behind the computer 24/7. If I was in bed, I was on the phone researching. I didn't get any sleep for 14 months. That's when I found the paper written by Patrick. I said at the beginning, I was lucky. I was so lucky. I was putting into Google search bar, loss of thumb following surgery. There on the 3rd page was a title called, do you want to say it? Isolated? I'll tell you what it is. Isolated thumb, interphalangeal flexor weakness following total hip arthroplasty. There's no way I would have found it. And the only reason I found it was because the paper was published on my birthday, which was? And that's how lucky I was. It took me about a month to build up enough courage to send Patrick an email, because I wasn't sure, is he going to go away, leave me alone? But within an hour, I'd say, or even 10 minutes, I don't know, you sent me an email back with a whole list of questions that it took me another day to answer. This was over Easter and the emails were going backwards and forwards. Then every time I get one set of results, I send the results to him and go, no, I think you need to do this next. And that's how I went along this path, being repeatedly told nothing can be done for you. Eventually, I did get to see my surgeon, the Bulldog supporter. He did operate, and 2 days later, my arm was not paralysed anymore. 4 months later, I had full use of my arm and my hand. His response was, Dinaaz, you're amazing. You proved each and every doctor wrong. Life's a journey, and everyone goes through good times and bad times, but it's up to us to rise above it. I've been so lucky that along my journey, I've met so many beautiful people along the way. I'd like to introduce one very special person to you, Danny. Danny is one of the most talented people that I know. You are, aren't you? Danny drew the sketches for me that are in my book. He's incredible. I'd be talking and he'd be just sketching away. And he'd go, is this what you want? I go, where did that come? But he says, I've got something very little for you. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. Thank you, Dinaaz, for this opportunity that you gave me. This is my first ever book that my drawing's in. Your story has really inspired me in every way possible. So, just want to say thank you 100.
Number between 1 and 100. Get on your lucky number.
50.
50? Okay. Who's got 50? Wow.